where do you consider yourself on the O.H Ivie thing? I mean, you might not say about yourself, but you freaking cracked the nut. Like, I mean, that's what got it out there, correct? Or
Yeah, we were accidental nutcrackers for sure on that one. That's a pretty crazy story. You probably don't got time for it, but I could tell it if you want.
always have time for it.
Well, it was that major ice
Yeah.
storm, Snowmageddon, got down below zero in Texas for like 3 days, and the apocalypse happened down here. I think that was when I lived in Nebraska, though. So we had a trip to film content down in Choke Canyon in South Texas, actually planned for like months in advance with 6 Cents. And so we were going to meet a bunch of guys and down in Choke Canyon, but we wanted to fish somewhere on the way down there because those guys couldn't leave Houston because the roads were all closed and you couldn't get gas. The gas stations were closed, couldn't buy anything. There's no electricity, nothing. So I was like, all right, well, we're not going to wait. We took work off. Like my buddy took work off and I was fishing. I was like, I got to make content. So we're coming down. And so we're going to hit a couple lakes on the way down, and we didn't see open water in Texas or on the drive down until we got like midway through Texas. Even Lake Fork had several inches of ice, which is wild. So we get down there and we're driving through like Oklahoma, and I'm like, we'll just hit some of the power plant lakes because it's hot water. They'll be good. And so I call them, and somehow someone answered it at like all of them, and they're like, yeah, we're closed. It's not safe for people to be out driving. You're not coming here to fish. We're closed. It's like, all right, that's not good. And then O.H Ivie was just a lake that I had received a message about months before, along with the other thousands of lakes people tell me to go fish because it's the best lake in the country. But some guy said that we've been catching 25 to 30 pound limits in our local tournaments and occasional 10 pounders. So I was like, all right, let's head that direction of Dallas, and maybe on the way down we'll find open water. And luckily when we got to the ramp, it was the first lake we saw the entire drive that didn't have ice on it. And it was like 10 degrees and windy when we got there. The water was like 35 degrees. And man, we put the boat in, didn't even put it on plane because I was worried about the engine not being warm enough. I just idled out to the first thing that looked like a place a fish would hold on, and started seeing blobs on the screen, and I thought they were carp or something. And we fired the A-rig out, backlash, because all our rod guides were frozen after the first cast. I was like, okay, well, we can't use that. And so I pick up a spinning rod because the guides are big enough. You can cast more than once. And I had a little like 2/8 swim bait on a little jig head, and I hooked the first fish, and I fought it forever. It was like a 9-pound largemouth. I was like, well, that's incredible. There's no way that the rest of these are bass, and they were all bass. And so I caught like, I don't even know, 8 or 10 more because it was so cold. It was like impossible to cast or do anything, but I caught 8 or 10 more. Biggest one was like 10 pounds. And then the next day we went out there, we had that 60-pound limit with the 16-pounder. And we didn't want to wreck the lake and blow it out. So we wanted to get the official weight. Joe's fish he caught after I'd caught 2 12-pounders, and he caught a 16. I had never caught a 10-pounder before, and I caught 2 12s in a half hour.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, we even tied up a double A-rig because we had been fishing all morning, and we caught like 50 fish, but nothing over like 7 or 8 pounds. So we went to another spot. This was all the first spot. The second day too, we had gone back. So we go to another spot that looked good, and I tie on I was like, all right, we got enough fish for a video. Let's make a second video. And I was like, I'll tie you up a double Alabama rig to my buddy. I was like, that'll make a good thumbnail. And so I tie it up for him, and it took me forever. And so I was like, dude, you got to let me throw it one time on your rod. And so I throw it out once at a fish, and one bumped it on the way. I was like, oh my God. So the next cast, I was like, I got to throw it one more time. So I throw it again. I caught a 12-pounder on it. Yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, so we catch us end of the night. I'm not even fishing anymore. I'm drinking beers and the whiskey, sitting back in the back of the boat. My camera guy and Joe are fishing. He hooks a 16-pounder. We get it in. We're freaking out. And it's getting dark, and there's no one's open. There's no reception. It's Snowmageddon, Ice-mageddon, whatever. We can't even get a hold of anybody. So we go to the there's a guy that was sitting in the parking lot, happened to be the owner of the local marina up there. And he's like, oh yeah, we got a scale here if you want to weigh it. Well, it turns out the guy like posted on Facebook like seconds after to the Texas fishing page, which has like tens of thousands of people. And so we were like keeping on the DL and not even telling our friends. And they're all just as soon as we get back in reception, they're blowing us up about it. We're like, how the hell did you even find out? But we didn't even want to turn into the share lunker program because we didn't want the lake to get a lot of pressure. So we go down to release his fish, and it kicks off strong and floats back up to the surface. And we're like, oh my God, we can't let this fish die. So we go get it, try to revive it again at the dock, hold on to it. Kicks off strong, floats back up. We're like, oh shit, this isn't good. Well, we're not turning this fish loose like and letting it die.
Yeah.
And we're going down to Choke Canyon that night. So we're like, we'll hold on to it and try to get hold of the Texas Parks and Wildlife on the way down. So we get an hour down the road to where we get some phone.
So you're driving around with a 16-pounder in your live well.
Correct. So yeah, we're like, well, it's gonna die if we release it, so we got to do something with it. Like we at least get a mount of it if it's gonna die.
Yeah.
And so we finally get to where we got reception, and Texas Parks and Wildlife, they answer their phone and they're like, all right, we'll get you the share lunker guy's number. And we talked to them and they're like, well, you left the lake and we aren't really available to travel right now. Can you bring it to our facility? And it was like 3.5 hours away. And so we're like, all right. So we drove 3.5 hours, and they were able to, we get there and they're able to revive the fish, put it in like this they did all the biological stuff, put it in salt water and all types of crazy stuff to bring it back. And yeah, she's still alive and good to go. Well, of course they post online about the lake, and, next thing you know, it's 2 days later, a lake that has never seen forward-facing sonar or really any fishing pressure in a very long time has 700, 800 boats at it. And it's a 15,000 acre lake. It's not a big body of water. Most of it's dead water. And it's obvious what part's not very good. So yeah, it's gotten pounded since then and kind of created the old forward-facing giant bass craze out there.
Here's the only part that confused me. Why the hell were you going to Choke? Like, why were I get it.
Great question. Great question. Only reason we were going out there was because we stayed at the hotel, the only place to stay there, a motel, and they had no running water and no electricity. And so you can imagine the toilet not being able to flush and stuff like that.
Oh,
and yeah, it was not pleasant. And Casey, the Sixth Sense owner, he had cabins booked for all of us down at Choke, and we heard Choke was good too. But we're like, we'll fish at Choke for a day or two. But we had the week off. He had the week off. My buddy Joe, so I was like, we're going back to Ivie after a couple of days of filming content, and we did that. And but man, by the time we got back there, it was still really good. But there was a million boats.
Yeah, I imagine.
I do regret leaving that though. I mean, to be honest, I regret leaving without question. I don't care where you got to poop.
Well, I mean,